This girl you walk the whole earth for. Put her on your back and just carry her attitude.
Hey, it's your girl Cash. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video will be a story time. If you see anything fluffy, that's my blanket, because y'all, it's a little cold. But this story time will be about the time I ran away from my foster moms. So if you were ever in a group home with me, which a lot of y'all weren't, I was kind of what was known as like a good girl. Like I think honestly I had never ran away. I rarely got in trouble in the group home unless I was fighting because somebody stole my stuff, or unless I was like fighting at school, because that's what I would usually do, was fighting. My grades was good, I would go to school, I was in my correct grade, like I was in after school programs. But if you played with me, I was gonna turn into a pit bull. And I don't know, I think I just had a lot of misplaced anger back then. If you haven't watched the story time about like me and my foster mom and how my foster sister was acting a fool, you gotta go watch that one to understand this one. This one is basically like not a part two, but somewhat of a continuation, so you can understand like the vibe, what was going on. So after the whole situation with my me and my foster mom arguing about, you know, stuff popping up missing in her room, we kind of had like somewhat called a truce for a while because her mom was coming from Germany to visit. So her and her mom, she had already told me that her and her mom had issues before, but her mom had bought her house. So it's like, you know, the house was in her mom's name. So whenever they wanted to come visit, she just had to come let them. And that's why they had like a room in the house. But it wasn't like necessarily like, oh, you know, how can I say this? She didn't want her mom to visit, but you know, it's like she's gonna come regardless, so at least the kids get to see their grandparents. So before her mom came, she ended up sitting me down and was just like, hey, you know, my mom's coming to town, like I really don't want us to have any issues, like let's just put on the united front while she's here or whatever. So while she was there, we were pretty much so cool. But I started to realize like on the second or third day that her mom was there, her mom was just like really not feeling me. Like I would always kind of like peep that her mom would be staring at me. Like if I'm in a room and I'm taking a nap, if I turn my head and as the door cracks, her mom's like kind of standing in the crack watching me. Or if I'm in the kitchen cooking, her mom would just kind of like stand in the hallway and watch me. And Samantha had told me like, you know, don't take offense to it because there's not a lot of black people in Germany. But now that I'm older, I don't think that that's necessarily what it was. I just think that her mom had an issue with me. And it may have been because I was black, but I don't think it was just because there wasn't a lot of black people in Germany. Her dad, on the other hand, which is another reason why I think the mom was always watching me, her dad didn't speak a lot of English, but he was kind of like watchy too, because I don't know, how can I explain this? Basically, like, you know, our living room is like, if you look straight out of the living room, you can see down the hallway. The hallway is where the rooms are like located, and you can see if somebody comes out of the bathroom or come out of their room. I would notice that like anytime I would go take a shower, like her dad would always make sure that he was like sitting, you know, on the couch facing towards the bathroom so he could look at me when I came out. And that's why I made sure I started getting dressed, even if I just had to put on like a little fluffy onesie till I was like, you know, in my room. That's what I was gonna do. It was no more walking around just with little tights and stuff on, because he was creeping me out. But you know, the dad, he never really like said anything too crazy because he didn't speak English, but he would just always be kind of giving me a creepy smile. So with the mom, she would just always have like something slick to say, but for the most part I just would just like, you know, I would just say okay. And I would always make sure that I was rarely home because I already wasn't on the best of terms with her daughter, so I was always in and out the house. But one day when I had came home, the mom was like, you know, she was kind of sitting in the room, and I had seen her. I spoke to her when I had came home from school, and then I went in the kitchen and I started making my lunch. So I think this night I had to work, so I probably had went in there and I was making me a little bit of shrimp alfredo so I could take it to work with me too. So I'm making the shrimp alfredo and I'm like sauteing the shrimp. So y'all know I got like the butter, the garlic, the seasoning, the pan or whatever. Y'all know back then when you're a teenager and you know how to make some alfredo, can't nobody tell you nothing. So I'm like cooking and things like that. And also I forgot to mention, one of the big barriers in living in a house where you are the only African American one was the way that food was cooked. Samantha, no shade, everybody in the house hated her food, down to her boyfriend, and he would let it be known. But it's like she would actually put like effort into the meal. She would do the recipes and look up different things on Pinterest, but she wouldn't use any seasoning other than salt and pepper. And she would say it's because like seasoning is like fattening and it's a lot of sodium. But dog, if you ain't never smelled chicken being cooked without no seasoning, it smells like a crime scene, and I'm not even being funny. Like, ugh. So when I was making my shrimp, I noticed that her mom was like kind of standing in the hallway watching me per usual. And I would try not to like say anything when people are staring at me. I would just always give her a little smile because it was weird. It was honestly very uncomfortable. So when I was cooking, I like kind of sensed her in the hallway, but I didn't turn her way. So she kind of had told me, she was like, you need to put water in your shrimp, like if you're gonna cook it. And I was like, oh, okay, like thank you, but I'm not, like I didn't say this to her, but I was like, oh, okay, thank you. And I just finished making my shrimp. I didn't put any water in my shrimp because I was sauteing them. I've never heard of I'm gonna keep it a bean with y'all. Fuck all that. I wasn't putting no water in that shrimp. Like, I seen the way that your daughter cooks and she learned from you, not putting no water in my shrimp. And why would I put water in a bowl, in a pot with butter in it? It was just too much. So I was like, okay, thank you. And I guess she stayed in the hallway to see if I was going to put water in my shrimp. And when she seen me like take the shrimp out of the pot and not put water in it, she was like, oh, I'm just trying to help you. Like, you don't have to be rude. And I was like, oh. I was like, okay. Like, I wasn't trying to be rude. Because she said it, I said, oh, thank you. But I'm not going to make my food the way that you want it made. Mind you, I'm not cooking for everybody in the house. I'm just cooking for me so I can have something to eat at work tonight. So the mom ended up getting really mad and she stormed off to the room and she like slammed her door. And the husband was sitting on the couch and he was just kind of like, in my mind, that translated to like, look, the bitch is crazy. Like, you can't really, there's no reasoning with her. She doesn't care. Like, I don't know if he understood English, but I knew he understood enough to know that like this lady is crazy. So I ended up getting home at like 11 o'clock and everybody was always already asleep. But the next day, like, when I had got back home from school, Samantha was like in her room crying, and Jenny had came to my room and she was like, hey, can you come talk to Samantha with us? Like, you know, she's going through a really hard time and she just needs our support. So I went in there and we were all just sitting on the bed and the kids and her boyfriend are rubbing her back or whatever. And she's just like, what happened between you and my mom yesterday? And I was like, oh, you know, she was trying to tell me like how to cook my shrimp. And I said, thank you, but I didn't do what she told me to do. And she got upset with me. And she was just like, see, man, like she always does this. Like something small can happen and she can just take it and blow it up to be something that doesn't have to be. Go figure. Wonder who else does that. Samantha, yo, like, bitch, this is the pot calling the kettle. The apple definitely didn't fall too far from the tree. But she was like, I knew it was something because when I got home yesterday from work, she started screaming at me, telling me that I'm raising y'all to be failures. Why everybody want to cut grass when I'm filming? But basically, like, Samantha's mom came home and started yelling at her, telling her that, like, oh, you're raising them to be failures. They're never going to be anything. Like, I never see them doing homework. But she wasn't really talking about them. She was saying specifically me. She was saying that like, she never sees me doing homework. All she sees me doing is sleeping and things like that. And Samantha was telling her, like, you know, the girl's on honor roll. She's in high school. Like, school over here is different than what it is in Germany. Like, because most of our homework was online or, you know, things that we probably did when we had extra time in school, because I told y'all I always had junior and senior privilege, so I would have a couple hours anyway. But her mom just wasn't trying to hear that. I think she was just looking for a reason to like target me, but also just to complain to Samantha. So, you know, that night she was in there crying and we was all just rubbing her back, telling her that it was gonna be okay. And we had seemed like we really got back on good terms, but after her mom had left, I kind of realized that, you know, it wasn't really that she wanted to get back on good terms with us. She just wanted to, like, you know, put on like we were the Brady brunch in front of her mom, so her mom wouldn't be able to tell you like I told you so, because her mom just, I don't know, she was always looking for a way to down Samantha about what she would do. So once her mom leaves, like, you know, Samantha is kind of like, you know, back on her BS. So now her new rule is anytime that she leaves the house, I have to leave too, because I don't want to babysit the kids. Mind you, like I told y'all, I would have had no issue babysitting the kids, but you're not going to talk to me crazy while I'm doing you a favor. It's just never going to work out like that ever in life. So I had went with them. Like, she had woke me up at like 9 o'clock in the morning because one of the sons who had a physical disability, he would always have to go to his physical therapy. So she was saying like, oh, you know, you have to get up, we have to take him to his physical therapy, blah, 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 blah. And she knew I had to work this day, so it was just like, you're just doing things to be messy and mean. So I ended up going with them, and I like sat outside in the car, and she was like, oh, you know, you can sit outside in the car, but I'm not going to turn the car on. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, shit, I'm a teenager. Like, if I get too hot, I can get out the car. Like, I'm not a kid that has to have the AC on. So she got out the car. I ended up like taking a nap in the back seat of the van. So a couple hours later, they finished with his appointment and they come back outside, and she slams the fucking van door super hard to wake me up. So we ride back to the house, and she's basically like telling me like, just know tomorrow you got to come to an appointment too, so don't get comfortable in the morning. Like, make sure you're up because I'm not going to wake you up. And it's like, at this point, you're not even like, there's not really a reason that you want me to come to this appointment. You just want to get back at me because I wouldn't babysit the boys. And your behavior right now is going to be the reason why I don't ever babysit them again, because you're not going to retaliate against me because I don't want to be a pro bono babysitter. Like, it's just not going to happen. So around this time, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I think that like Samantha used to just get off work, and whatever the hell she was going through at work, she was just looking for somebody to take it out on. Like, anytime she would just come home and see me, she would be on straight up BS. So the first time, like, I told y'all she acts like her mom. So she would walk into the room and she would like turn on all the lights, like especially if I was taking a nap or sleeping, or even if I was just in there chilling, she'll turn on all the lights and she would just kind of sit in the room and look around and then find something to complain about. So this day, she was like kind of looking at the bag on the back of the door, because I had like one of those little like Target or Walmart bags on the back of the door, because I would always have to come home and clean up our room because Jenny still wasn't cleaning up after herself. So when I would come home and clean up the room, like, I didn't want to keep on walking the trash out to the kitchen, so I would just like put a little bag on the back of the door. It wouldn't be any food or anything like that in the bag, probably chip bags that Jenny done left in there, but it was just nothing crazy. But basically she walked in and she was like, this is disgusting, like, we don't do that in this household. Like, if you have trash, you need to take it outside of the room because it's gonna attract bugs. Which, don't get me wrong, she's completely right, but at the same time, if you were really worrying about the trash in the room attracting bugs, it wouldn't be a problem when I put it in the bag on the back of the door. You would say something when Jenny's in here leaving fucking Taki's bags in her bed and on the floor and underneath her bed, like, but whatever. Like, at that point, I was kind of just getting to the point where I'm like, you know, you have to let Samantha have it, like, when she comes in the room on that BS. So when she was saying all that about the trash bags, I was just kind of like, okay, and I had rolled over and I like pretended to be asleep. So she had left the light on and she left out the room and she closed the door. So when she had left out of the room and closed the door, like, I assumed that she was just done talking to me about whatever she was done talking about. Maybe like probably 10-15 minutes later, I ended up falling back asleep. She come in the room, turn the lights back on, and she's just like, oh, you know, you made my children feel unsafe in their own household. Basically, she was talking about when me and Jenny was arguing. She was saying that the boys were scared and they heard us arguing and basically like they were crying and things like that. And y'all know I would take full accountability if that was the case. Granted, I shouldn't have said anything to Jenny while the boys were home because, you know, you just don't do certain things in front of kids. But they were all the way on the opposite side of the house in the back room, like playing with their toys. Their room was damn near bigger than the garage. They didn't hear anything that we were talking about. And I feel like if they would have heard it, those kids, they would have came out in the hallway and I would have seen them crying. When I had went back into the room after me and Jenny got done arguing, they were still in their room playing with their trains, weren't even paying me any attention. So I was just like, okay, Samantha, like, mind you, this situation took place probably like, because her mom came there and stayed for like a month. They would always come from Germany and stay for a month. So you're bringing up a situation that happened last month for what reason? So she starts crying and things like that. And she's just like, you made my children feel unsafe. And she's just like playing victim and she's being really, really weird. So I kind of peeped like her doing all this. And something like kind of had told me like, well, actually, no. So when I'm peeping her doing all this, like, I'm getting irritated because, like, she just got the light on. She's just yelling. Like, she's just doing the most. And I'm like, bro, this is a situation that happened over a month ago. Like, we already talked about it before your mom got here. Like, why are we doing this again? So I turned around and I was telling her, like, Jenny, I don't care. Like, I do not care, Jenny. I don't care. And I told her, she was like, oh, so you don't care about my children's safety. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Jenny knows that I'm not telling her I don't care about the kids' safety. Because if I had threatened the kids or made them feel uncomfortable in any way, I would apologize. This ain't about the kids' safety. This is about you finding yet another reason to nitpick with me about a month-old situation. So I get up out of my bed and like I start getting dressed and she's still yelling and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just take a walk like to the park or whatever. So she's like, oh, you're not going anywhere. Like, you're gonna sit and you're gonna listen to this conversation or whatever the case may be. Mind y'all, she's doing all this. I'm not about to push past Jenny or anything like, not Jenny, sorry. I'm not about to push past Samantha or anything like that because I know what she'll turn this into. And I don't want her to make it seem like she feels threatened by me. So I'm like about to leave out of the window. Because it was really getting to that point. Like, she has me cornered in this tiny ass room and she's screaming. why I turn around and I look at Jenny's hand, and she has a, not Jenny, why do I keep saying Jenny? Sorry, Samantha. I turn around and look at Samantha's hand, and Samantha has her phone in her hand recording. So at this point, it's starting to make sense. So I said, oh, you're recording this. So Samantha was basically recording this situation, trying to get a reaction out of me, like by waking me up and like repeatedly waking me up and turning on the lights. Samantha wants me to react to her or like get mad and start screaming and things like that, so she can kind of like show people and be like, here, you know, see, like, look at how she acts. Now, I'm just gonna keep it a being, and if you ever been in the system, you can relate. A lot of people don't like to admit that sometimes adopting and fostering just doesn't work out. I don't know why people act like that, because it's a high percentage of those situations that don't work out. But a lot of people don't want to be seen by their friends and family like the villain, because not saying a lot of people, but some people who don't have pure intentions, when they adopt children, they kind of like use us as like, how can I say it? We get kind of used as like a prop or like a charity case, like, oh look, I'm such a good person, I've adopted this child, like she's not even mine, and look, I'm taking care of her. But they don't want to seem like they're a terrible person because they technically like send us back to the system. Mind you, I'm saying this as somebody who has been in the system. If you ever adopt a child and it's just not working out and y'all are not meshing well, just give them back to the system. Like, don't sit there and try to create narratives and make them look like they're a bad child or something's wrong with them, because that's just simply not right. And going through a bad adoption process is already traumatic enough. It doesn't need to be no extra sauce put on top of it to protect your reputation. Like, so when she's doing all this, I'm like, oh, like, you're recording, Jenny, really? So she grabs the phone and she stops recording, and she's like, get the fuck out of my house, like, da 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 da. And she's yelling. She's like, you're not appreciative. Like, you need to go back to the group homes. Like, they didn't treat you any better there, and you come over here and you do this and you act like this, or whatever the case may be. So at this point, like, she's like in the hallway and she's yelling and stuff like that. So at this point, I just kind of scoop past her and like I walk out the door. So when I leave out, I kind of like, you know, I go to the park and I sit there for a minute. My homeboy who lives in a complex, he ends up coming out there, and we're just talking because he would have family issues too. So we just kind of out there talking, and I stay out there with him probably to like, you know, like probably like 10 o'clock, 10:30, because that's what time my curfew was. I think I didn't even end up going to work that night. So I end up going back in the house, and the next day she wakes me up like she said she would and was like, you know, we have to go to one of the little boys' appointment. So we get up, we go to the appointment, and this time she's saying like, oh, you can't sit in the van no more, you gotta come sit in his appointment and don't go to sleep because this is the doctor's office, like, you know, you need to look presentable. So we go to his appointment. Mind you, his physical therapy appointments just take forever, and you know, you can't complain about it because those people are in there trying to help him, like, you know, learn how to walk on his own without any assistance. But those appointments will be damn near like 3 hours long. So while we're in there, she's like, you know, me and her, we're not really talking that much. We're just letting the time pass. I'm playing Candy Crush, whatever. So after his appointment, we head back to the house, and like, you know, we're all in there chilling. So once I go back in my room and I finally get in my bed, she comes back and she's like, oh nope, get back up, we have to go out again. But I noticed that when I get in the van, it's only me in the van. Like, nobody else had to come, not Jenny, not the boys, not even her boyfriend. So I'm like, what are we getting in the van for? So I asked her, I'm like, okay, well, where are we going? And she's like, oh, you know, I have to go get gas. And I'm just like, now, it's one thing if you don't want me to be in the house by myself for long periods of time, whatever, but everybody else is at home and you're making me come to the gas station. Mind you, she's being super petty. She's not even going to the gas station like right down the street that she actually has a gas car for. We're going like all around the world to a whole different gas station. I'm like, okay, like at this point you're just dragging it. So I didn't say anything about it. We're in the van and we're just driving, and I end up like just sitting in the car. So she tries to start off a conversation about the whole me and Jenny arguing situation at this point, and she's just telling me how I'm ungrateful and stuff. And now I'm kind of using my head now, and I was like, I know not to engage with you because I already see what type of timing you on. And I feel like with Samantha, she wasn't getting the bigger picture. Actually, no, she probably kind of was using it against me. This is like around the time frame where there was a lot of police brutality and protests and things like that going on. You are trying to paint me as if I'm a violent African American person. Mind you, Samantha's like 5'4", I'm like 5'8" at this time. I've always been a Jolly Green Giant. You're trying to do things to provoke me so you can be able to call the police, but you don't understand what type of situation you're putting me in. And granted, I was super paranoid back then, but now that I'm an adult, I don't think I was wrong, because Samantha could have called the police on me for anything, and it could have just went terribly, because we already know how people have like stigmas against kids in the foster care system, and it was just something I didn't want to deal with. So she's talking to me, and I'm pretty much so not saying anything. Granted, I know it's disrespectful to ignore people, but at this point, Samantha, what do you want me to say? Anything I say back is going to be considered me talking back to you, and I'm not in the mood to deal with the fucking screaming today, like, because she'll start screaming at me and it'll be okay. I start screaming and she's crying, telling me I'm ungrateful. So what am I to do at this point? So we're probably driving down the street for like 5 minutes, and she's just talking and talking and talking, and I'm not saying anything. I don't have in my headphones or anything like that. I'm just not saying anything, but I'm playing Candy Crush on my phone, which it probably was a little bit disrespectful, but oh well, like, it is what it is at this point. So she ends up parking the car like at this Dunkin' Donuts, and she parks like in the front, but she doesn't pull in the spot all the way. She takes off her seatbelt, leans across the seat, and she starts screaming in my face. She's like, "You're so ungrateful. Like, you hear me talking to you and you're ignoring me. I would never do my mother like this. You should be grateful that I took you out of the foster home. Blah, 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 blah." And she's just like screaming in my face. But mind you, our van didn't have any tents on it. We're at Dunkin' Donuts, and this Dunkin' Donuts was like on Front Street. So we're like right across this, like, it's already a busy intersection right here. There's people at the Dunkin' Donuts. There's people at the gas station next to it. Like, there's just a lot of people, and it's like there's no music playing, so I'm pretty sure people hear you yelling, and they're like looking in the car at us. So at this point, Samantha's like screaming in our face, and she's like got her whole chest on the armrest screaming at me. And I'm like, Samantha, like, come on, bro, like, you know what you're doing. Like, you screaming at me, you doing all this, you in my face, but if I scream back at you, like, you know how that's gonna look, and they're gonna call the police on me. And I was like, Samantha, get out my face, get out my face. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? So I end up just getting out of the van, and I started crying, and I started walking away, because I'm like, bruh, like, what do you want from me at this point? And honestly, like, I was on the verge of having a mental breakdown, because nothing I do is good enough. Like, I was trying to minimize myself in this lady's household to the point where she didn't even see me. Like, I would go in that house, I wouldn't even say anything. I would just go eat and then try to hurry up and leave and go back to school or go to my boyfriend's house or whatever the case may be. So when I was like walking away, she ended up driving like the opposite way back home. She didn't even go get no damn gas. So I'm like, you just really brought me out here to argue with me. And it really just gave that you wanted me to react by you getting in my face, so I could have swung on you in public, and there could have been witnesses around to say that I hit you first. Because I think she kind of knew, because how much I was getting suspended. It just was like, it doesn't take a lot to provoke me. And that was really sad back then. But it's like, I was young and I didn't know how to handle my emotions. So I end up crying, and I'm on the phone with my homegirl, and when I pick up the phone for her, she's crying too. So she was going through it with her boyfriend at the time, because he had left her in the hotel room by herself. So me and her just on the phone, and she's like, bro, can you just come over here and sit with me? Like, whatever. So I had probably like $10-$20 in my account, but it wasn't enough for me to order the Uber from where I was. So I walked down the street a little bit more, and once the Uber got a little bit cheaper, I just Ubered over to the hotel room she was at. So we sat in the hotel room for a while, and we were just talking to each other, venting, and I told her what happened. So she was just like, you know what, like, if you want, you can come stay with me for a while. So when her boyfriend got back to the hotel room, he had kind of like, he took us by my house so I can go pick up a duffel bag of my clothes. And when I got there, I didn't see Samantha's car in the garage or in the front yard. So I just ran in, grabbed me a duffel bag, and I had ran back out. So I make it to her house, and I talked to her mom, and her mom was like, well, you know you can't stay here, honey, but you know you can like stay here as long as you need, but just know it's not going to be permanent. And I was grateful for that, because a lot of people would not have opened their doors to me during that time. So she was pretty much so telling me, like, you know, as long as you go to school and do what you got to do for these 2 weeks, like, it ain't going to be no problem. But I don't want the police knocking on my door, so make sure you go to school. So I was still going to school, and I was still going to work. My friend, she was going to volunteer at the daycare after school, so it was all working out. And her brother would come pick me up sometimes, so I would just Uber back to her house, so they ended up giving me a key. Y'all, that was the most peaceful 2 weeks of my life. I wanted to beg her mom to let me stay so bad, but I just knew that, like, you know, I didn't want to wear out my welcome or annoy her, so I just was, like, you know, grateful for the little bit of time I did have. So one night I'm at work. Mind y'all, I done told y'all, Samantha done let me walk home from work plenty of nights, 11 o'clock in the rain. She never gave a damn. But I think it had got to the point where Samantha kind of like memorized my work schedule. So one night I'm at work, and probably around like this is before closing. We used to close at like 10, so maybe like 8:30, 9:30. Samantha walks in and she like sits in line like she's a customer, and then she walks up to the register and she's like, you know, here's your medicine. Mind you, the medicine that she was bringing me was my birth control. I wasn't a virgin at the time, but I wasn't like sexually active. So I'm like, okay, I'm not even really shipping out this birth control. I didn't really want to take it because I'm like, that's not really a point, but I just took it so she could leave. So I hurry up and take it, and I'm like, all right, Samantha, you can go. She's like, oh no, honey, I just want to talk to you. And I'm just like, Samantha, like, every time you get mad at me, you tell me to get the fuck out your house, but you want to come out in public and make a scene. So I'm like, so she's like just trying to talk to me, and I'm like, Samantha, I'm really like not in the mood to talk, because mind you, my coworkers are embarrassing, and the ladies at my job already didn't like me like that. Like the older women were already super petty towards me, so they started whispering and stuff like that. So when she kind of like peeps them looking at us, she starts crying super fucking loud. Cottrell, I just want you to come home. Like, why are you doing this? Like, I don't know if you're safe. And I'm just like, but you don't care if I'm safe. You letting me walk through Green Acres all fucking night simply because you're mad at me for what job I got. Like, you do not care about my safety. You just like to manipulate the situations. So when she's crying super loud, like my manager, he ends up coming out and he's like, hey, Cottrell, like what's going on? And I'm just like, you know, like nothing. So Samantha ends up asking him like, can she take a 5-minute or 10-minute break just to come outside and talk to me? And I'm just like, no, I don't need a break. And my manager was like, yeah, of course you can take a break and go outside and talk to her. Like, you know, she doesn't need to ask for a break. And I'm like, no, bro, it's cool, I don't need a break. And I'm like, Samantha, please leave. Because I think with her coming in here doing all this, she thought that I was going to get fired from my job. I did too. But my manager, I think he had knew me for a while, so he was super understanding. I think I had told him that, like, you know, I was in a foster home. So he ends up like, you know, kind of just, he's trying to talk to Samantha and calm her down and give her tissues. Y'all, I just go in the bathroom and I lock myself in there for a minute because I'm like, this is so freaking embarrassing. Maybe if I just stay in here for a while, she'll leave. So when I had came back out, I guess my manager had been talking to Samantha, and he was like, you know, look, honey, I know I'm just your manager. I don't try to get in y'all personal business, but I was a teenager too before. Like, I used to get into it with my dad, but you can't just leave home. Like, you know, you got to go back home. Like, she seems like she really loves you and wants the best for you. Like, you know, go back home. You're stressing her out. Like, I'm a parent. I don't know how I would feel if my child just left the house. And don't get me wrong, what he was saying was true, but he just didn't understand it, because Samantha would go turn on the waterworks and pretend to be mommy dearest. But I'm like, if y'all knew the way that lady talked to me in that house and told me to get the fuck out, and mind you, I had been out of Samantha's house for like 3 or 4 days. Why are you doing all of this now? So I was just telling my manager, I was just like, no, like, it's fine. Like, it's not what it seems. Like, it's gonna be all right. Like, don't let this like affect my job. Like, it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. This don't have nothing to do with the job. And he was like, yeah, honey, but you know, just go back home. Like, just go back home. So the next day, my caseworker calls me and she's just like, hey boo, you know, I know that you're safe. I see that your school attendance, like, you're still going and things like that, but you're gonna have to go back home because Samantha has filed a runaway report on you, and if you don't go back home, they're gonna end up sending the police to your school, and also they're gonna send the police to wherever you at and get them in trouble. And I was like, I just broke down crying because I did not want to go back to Samantha's house, because I knew me back then. Samantha knew what she was doing. That's one thing I can say. She was really smart. That whole jumping up in my face and cornering me in rooms, like, I was getting overwhelmed to the point where sometimes I really just wanted to put my hands on Samantha, because it was like, you want a reaction so bad, I'm about to give it to you. But she was just like, you know, look, just go back home. Like, stop crying. Like, I'm going to get you out of there within 3 days. Like, you're not going to be in there longer than a week. I already put the paperwork in. Like, I done found you somewhere. We just need to get the paperwork signed and you can go. So I end up crying myself to sleep, but the next day after school, I take the bus back home to Samantha's house. And it don't even feel right calling that lady's house my home, because it wasn't a home for me. Like, she made it very clear that I was not wanted, and she did everything in her power to make me uncomfortable. So when I get off the bus that day and I walk in the house, I kind of see Samantha sitting at the table, and she's crying and her eyes are red, and she's talking to the therapist. So when she sees me walk in the house, she's like, oh my God, honey, like, you know, I'm so happy to see you. I'm so glad that you're safe. Like, I was worried sick about you. And the therapist is just like sitting over there, like, about to drop a tear. And I'm like, there's no way that y'all are believing this lady's shit. Mind you, the therapist wasn't to be trusted, because she also was half of the reason for me and Samantha's problems. Because there was a few times where I had told her things about what was going on in the household. Like, you know, how I felt like I wasn't fitting in and things like that. And then it's like every time I would tell my therapist something, she would probably go back and tell Samantha, because Samantha would be super weird towards me. Mind you, I was never telling the therapist anything negative about Samantha. I was just telling her that I'm not enjoying my time in this household. So she's doing all that, and she kind of walks up like she wants to hug me, and I like walk away from her and I go in the room. So the therapist is like, oh, do you want to have like a talk with her? Do you want to like sit down and, you know, try to mediate this? Like, I feel like you guys can work it out. You know, sometimes when you move into a new place, it can be an adjustment. And I'm just like, no, there's nothing for us to talk about. I'm going to be out of her household as soon as possible. And I said it to Samantha in front of the therapist. Why do you wait till people come around and make it seem like you love me so much and you're so sad when I leave, when you literally tell me to get the fuck out of your house? I done seen Jenny and her argue about all types of stuff, and she's never told Jenny to get out of her house. So it's obvious that you really wanted me out of your space, and that's what we were gonna do. I ended up having to suck it up, and I just went in the room and I was like, you know what, let me just stay here, let me not run away no more. I'm just gonna pack up all my stuff. Like, if I'm gonna be here, I might as well start packing up my stuff just to keep me busy, so that when they do call me, I can be ready to rock and roll. So I think maybe a day or two after this whole situation, my caseworker called me and she's like, I'm gonna be outside to pick you up in like 30 minutes, like have your stuff together. Child, when I tell y'all, I ran through that room like Sonic the Hedgehog, and I got all my stuff packed up, and I was so happy to see my caseworker car. I ain't never been so happy to see that minivan. But I ended up moving out that night, and I went back to a group home. And y'all, I don't care what nobody says, to this day I will always pick group homes over foster homes, because it's like, it's such an isolating experience, because it's like being adopted in general is already kind of like a weird situation, because it's like you're coming into a household where everybody already has their routine and their way of doing things, and you kind of have like, I don't know if it's called intruder syndrome or what, but it just, you feel really like out of place. So then for somebody to get mad at you and the first thing they say out of their mouth is like, oh, get out my house, it reminds you that you're not wanted here. You weren't a part of this family unit in the beginning. The only thing that really saddened me about the situation is that I wasn't able to say goodbye to the boys, because I really did develop a relationship with one of her sons. He was the sweetest little boy ever. Like, he didn't care about skin color, none of that. You could not tell him that me and him weren't real sisters. He was just the sweetest little boy ever, and I never, to this day, I have never seen him again, and that really hurt my feelings. Samantha did end up, like, you know, hitting me up on Facebook a year or two ago, and she had me as a friend on Facebook for years, and I just never thought about it. I never unfriended her, but she ended up messaging me and she was like, you know, hey, how are you doing? Like, I just wanted to check on you. I'm doing fine. Like, I graduate, like, I'm in school right now and I'm pursuing college. We go to the same school. Like, hopefully we're able to see each other one day. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, my immediate reaction was gonna be like to curse her out or something like that, but I just told her, like, you know, I'm happy for you that you're in college, you know, wish you the best. Because one thing that she always said while she had us was that she wanted to go back to school and kind of like, you know, get her other degrees and stuff like that. And honestly, people tell me that I'm crazy. Even people on TikTok, like, they got so mad at me when I talked about the situation before, and I told them, like, you know, I forgave her, because they were like, how could you forgive her for that? Because it was a lot going on. But that was just one of those situations where I learned that I had to forgive Samantha to move on with my life, because when I first went to that other group home, I was crashing out like the whole time I was there for months and months. Like, I was just fighting and constantly getting myself into trouble, and I started running away more because I feel like I hadn't healed from living with Samantha and just that whole feeling of betrayal in general. And that kind of showed me, like, you know, forgiveness really is for you, because harboring that hate in your heart, bro, it just turns you to a mean, nasty person, and like, you be ruining yourself trying to get back at other people, and they're just out living their life while you over there struggling because of the decisions that you made. But that will be the end of the story time. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.